Thank you. So good afternoon for some, I guess, because Angie is actually in Greece. Um, Thank you so much for everyone participating in today's session. And so my name is Miriam Chamberlain. I'm the event host today. I am a collaborating partner and HR consultant at Scale HR. It's my absolute pleasure today to introduce you to our speaker, Angie Verros. And just a little bit about Angie. So Angie is a strategic talent acquisition leader and global keynote speaker. She's very passionate about people and technology. She has an impeccable work ethic and proven track record of success in identifying, sourcing, hiring outstanding talent. With experience in both growth, entrepreneurial, and startup environments, Angie's sourcing methods have been adapted as best practices by companies around the globe. She is the author of various blogs and a popular keynote speaker at conferences worldwide. On a more personal note, Angie is a mom, wife, and a Duran Duran fan. Angie is thrilled to be joining us today at our social HR camp and being part of the roster. And before I turn it over to Angie today, I just wanted to highlight a couple important features. If you guys were at the morning session today, you're probably aware of them. But the AirMeet platform is very intuitive, great to use. But I just wanted to remind everyone, there is a chat function. So feel free to put your ideas, your comments, thoughts throughout the presentation to engage with the audience. And then there is a Q&A tab as well. So if you have some questions throughout the presentation, that burning questions that you want to ask Angie, feel free to put them in the Q&A tab. We will do kind of a Q&A session at the end of the session. And then just to inform everyone that this session will be recorded so that we'll be able to share it with others as well. So Angie, I will turn this over to you to get us started. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miriam. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited today to be talking about sourcing with a purpose. I feel like I've been on stage so many times and then doing some virtual events. This is one that I've been excited to do because I met Jeff. Jeff was actually one of the first folks who got me on stage, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. So it's exciting to be back with Social HR Camp. So I'm going to take a moment to share my screen and hopefully do it correctly because technology doesn't seem to be working with me. So I think you can all see my screen if I'm not mistaken. I think so. I'm going to take that as a yes. And if it's not, I see some thumbs up. I've got two screens, so I'm going back and forth, but I want to look at you. So sourcing with a purpose, that's what we're going to talk about today. But before I start talking about sourcing, I figured, well, I have a good 30 minutes in front of a new audience, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about myself. So, and the reason I talk about myself, you'll see later when we get into more of the messaging candidates, how it ties into it. So this is myself and my family. I have been in the sourcing business for about 17 years. I actually am a stockbroker turned recruiter. I kind of fell into it. I think all of us do. It's typipally not something that we say, I'm going to grow up one day and I'm going to become a recruiter, except for my daughter who says, Mom, I'm going to become a recruiter and do conference calls just like you. So that's a little bit about me. I started off in agency recruitment, worked in consulting companies, large companies, small companies. And then I founded Via Talent because of the passion that I have for sourcing and helping organizations scale and grow when they don't have the internal needs and the resources to help them get to their strategic goals. So that's my professional background. Again, I've been in the business for several years. I've produced conferences as well, so I know what it's like on the other side of the table, and I've spoken at a number of events globally about sourcing. And so then you see my family. I have a beautiful daughter, a stepson, my husband, and they typically follow me around when we go to conferences and get a chance to see the different areas of the globe. And just like Miriam said, I am a huge Duran Duran fan. So the initial when I started talking to Jeff, the initial introduction was going to be what my LinkedIn profile says: sorceress, mom, wife, Duran Duran fan. But Miriam was kind enough to give you a little more about myself. So that's a little bit about me. I've spoken at several conferences and I always like to highlight them here. And the reason I like to highlight them is just to show that there's so many resources, there's so much information out there, and anything that I've learned from fabulous people that speak at these events and talk about what the recruiting world is like. And so I do like to share my journey of how I've gotten to the point where I'm at today. A few of our client partners, just to showcase several companies that we do work with. We help them on a sourcing, when they're looking for some sourcing support or full life cycle recruitment. And I just thought it was nice to highlight a few of the companies that we do work with. A little bit about the company, Via Talent. I definitely don't like spending much time on this, but just to that you all get a chance to know a little bit about us. We are a boutique sourcing company, and we help organizations when they're looking to scale. So whether it's sourcing as a service, whether it's sourcing and engagement, helping companies do full life cycle recruitment, we help companies find qualified talent when they're experiencing difficult spikes. So that's it about Via Talent, my shameless plug. So I'm going to get into the Great Resignation. That's been the big talk the last several months, I should say 1 year plus. And I know Johnny Campbell from Social Talent touched upon this a little bit earlier today. So what is the Great Resignation? Well, we all know that, during the COVID-19 pandemic, there were a lot of changes in the recruitment world. Unemployment rate decreased, job openings increased, creating an influx of roles for people to fill, and for us as recruiters and sourcers to go out and find the right people. So why did this happen? People did not know what they wanted to do. People resigned in 2020. They didn't know what the job market was going to be like. They were burnt out. They wanted a better work-life balance. There were unreasonable demands. We're experiencing this right now with people returning to in-person work when remote is being accepted by a lot of other organizations. People don't want to go back into the office. There's also, different mistreatment during the pandemic, which caused a lot of people to rethink what they wanted to do and leave their current employers. So a number of different things, and I definitely don't need to go through all of the bullets, but we all know that there is a big need right now to bring more folks into organizations and creating a number of new positions that are open, and there's a huge demand and not enough of people that we can find in order to fill those roles. So this resulted in, and I could let you read this, but I don't personally know Amy, but I was on LinkedIn one day and I noticed that this post came out, and she's a recruiting leader at Canva. And if you could see, I've circled the two numbers. So it looks like there were 365,000 recruiter jobs advertised on LinkedIn worldwide at the same time that there were 342,500 software engineers and engineering roles open on LinkedIn worldwide. So why do I post this? I post this because people used to look for engineers. People used to source and try to find software engineers, front end, back end, DevOps, you name it. And it got to the point where there were so many recruiter openings, more than software engineers. It just seemed unbelievable. I did a search this morning when I was preparing for this presentation. And I also noticed that as of the last month, I would ask you to comment, but you can comment in the chat. I did a search in the last month of how many recruiter openings there are only in the US, and there were over 220,000 recruiter openings in the US. So big numbers and big challenges to fill those positions, and not only fill the recruiter positions, but then obviously fill in the other positions that we're all recruiting for. So sourcing with a purpose. I spoke at another event a couple of weeks ago, and ironically, Johnny Campbell was on that as well. And we were talking about, how do we keep up with sourcing, engaging candidates, and doing it in volume, but doing it the right way. Organizations are finding it a bit difficult, finding it a bit difficult to keep up with the demands. And so is it proper that one recruiter handle a rec load, I should say, of 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 positions? So what we decided to do was source with a purpose. And how do we do that? We segment our different teams so that we can excel in certain areas and do it with volume. So for example, what do we do when we have volume positions across all different organizations? We have a specific area that just does sourcing. We do sourcing, we do research, we go out, we find the best talent that we can, and that's all we do. We focus just on that piece. Then we have another area where we engage. So while the fabulous folks that we're finding on the sourcing side, those all go to an engagement platform. And platform, I mean a team where we use automation, but we use automation in a way that is unique and personal. And we reach out to those folks, and we reach out to them very intentionally, very personal, so that we can help them. Or I guess I shouldn't say help them, so we can understand what they're looking for and potentially pair them up with a fabulous role. And then what happens is we screen those candidates, and we screen those candidates so that we can uncover what their expertise is. We can uncover whether they're looking for a career change, whether they're the right fit for a role. We want to learn about them. I mean, we're in the business of people, and so we want to learn about our candidates to see where the potential fit is. So those areas are, I guess I should say, like the subject matter experts within each area. So subject matter sourcers, subject matter engagement folks, and subject matter screeners. And then we actually put them together, and we have a project manager who manages that particular area with the client and presents the sourced, engaged, qualified, and screened candidates directly to them. So when Jeff reached out to me and said, would you be interested in talking, at social HR camp, and what kind of topic? I said, well, I think we should talk about sourcing, because that's an area that people are struggling with. So we decided to take a different approach, as opposed to let's do full life cycle sourcing, or full life cycle recruitment, I should say. And let's separate it and segment it so that the best of the best can do each of the three areas. And then we're able to produce for our clients. So that's really what the sourcing with a purpose really is. And again, we'll take questions towards the end, but I do want to go in and talk a little bit more. I actually kind of just covered this. So from a sourcing perspective, what do sourcers do? We use different tools. We use Boolean, we use X-ray, we talent map, we build talent pipelines. We look at what the industry trends are. We look at what the research is out there. We look at technology stacks, and that's what brings us to the best candidates for our clients. And then engagement. So I've said this before, and I've said this at numerous events, that there are tools. There are so many tools out there that we can use to go out and find people. And I think that that's the easiest piece. The easiest piece is going out and finding candidates, although I think I'm going to contradict myself in one of the later slides. But it's probably one of the easier pieces of the business, is to go out and find the candidates. We've got tools and technology. And so if we use those to the best of our ability, we are able to go out and find those candidates. But what the tricky part is how do we engage with those candidates? Because essentially, we don't know if they're interested or they're looking. So we work on messaging that works. We try to create candidate messaging that, where other companies potentially fall short. And we're gonna talk a little bit about that again in one of the further slides. So we really want to cut through the noise and get to these candidates. And how do we do that? We do that by using a unique and targeted and intentional message. Because let's face it, and I don't have the slide, but if you Google what are recruiters or recruiters are, there's a lot of negativity out there. So we want to do the best of the best and make sure that we engage with candidates in a way that is meaningful to them. And then again, the screening piece. We do all the talking. Actually, all the candidates do. So we work with, our clients to develop questions that they want us to ask the candidates, so that we can uncover the important requirements of the role, and then send those candidates over to the client. So again, the way that the talent magic works: source, engage, screen, 3 different areas, and then we present those candidates to the client. Okay. I'm sure many of us in this room have seen a timeline and funnel strategy. That's what we do. We try to fill the top of the funnel and bring it all the way down, so that at the very bottom, we're able to present those qualified, interested, and screened candidates. I won't spend too much time on this slide, but I think we've all seen the funnel before. So now I want to talk about great talent and how hard it is to find great talent. And for those of us who have been in the business, we know that it's like finding a needle in a haystack. You're going to have that one requisition that requests every single technology. I want someone who has Java, AWS, Python, Docker, Chef, Puppet. They must be in the space, cybersecurity space. And I know my team out there knows what we're talking about. And they must have been doing this for the last 15 years, where we know that some of these technologies didn't even exist for the last 15 years. So how do we go out and find great talent? There are tools, there are Boolean strings, there are so many different ways that we can go find the talent, like I had mentioned earlier. It's a matter of knowing how to use those tools to actually go out and find the candidates. Again, I think that's the easier piece of the puzzle, whereas again, how do you find them? You go out, you use the different tools. Google is probably one of the best tools that's out there for people to go out and find candidates. And then you've got different browsers like DuckDuckGo or Bing or anything else. So there is a way to find them. But again, what I really want to talk about is what do recruiters actually think when they find the candidates? Do they think that, well, I found a perfect candidate on LinkedIn, matches the job description, great. I'm sure that that person's going to respond to me because I need to fill a job. Well, not really. This is what the candidate is thinking. Why is a recruiter sending me a message asking me if I'm interested for a job? Do they know who I am? Do they know what I'm interested in? Just because they found my profile on LinkedIn doesn't mean that I'm interested in a new position. The best that I've seen is when you actually go on and you find a profile and that profile states that recruiters, I am not interested, but they do it so discreetly at the bottom of their LinkedIn profile or at the bottom of their summary on LinkedIn, where most people don't catch that. And then they end up sending a message and then the candidate gets mad and then social media explodes. And then everybody knows that a recruiter spammed a candidate. So again, while we think that, oh, it's not a problem, I found this candidate and great, he fits the bill, I'm going to reach out and then I'm going to fill the role. And what the candidate is thinking, why are you reaching out to me? Did you not check out my profile? So we're going to have a little fun. I want to talk a little bit about messaging. And Deanna, I love Ryan Gosling as well. In the presentation, when I was doing this, I asked my daughter if she wanted to review it with me. She goes, I don't want to look at your presentation, Mom. And I said, yeah, I think you do. And so she's like, oh my God, I love Ryan Gosling. So that was fun. So we're going to do a poll. And Miriam, I would hit the button, but I know I'm probably going to screw it up. Oh, there we go. So messaging. I'd like for everyone just to take a minute and click on what your favorite message is. If you were a candidate and you were receiving one of these messages, which one would you choose? So I'll give you a couple of seconds to click on the messages, and I think you could do it directly on the screen if I'm not mistaken, and then the results will come up. So I'm trying to lure you into a company, into a role. Take a moment and would you respond if you're getting a message that says join the band or job opportunity? I could take a pause. And then I think once everybody has filled in or has made their selection, then we could, I think, Miriam, once everybody votes, then will the results come up? I would think so. There she is.
Sorry, Angie, can you see the results on stage?
Can I show the results? Sure.
Or are you able to see them on stage? Because I've just published them on stage.
I see the questions, but I don't see them live unless I'm doing something wrong. Do you want to publish them and we can walk through them?
Yeah, I could definitely do that for sure.
My team is saying they could see the results. I could see the questions, but I don't see the results.
Yeah, no problem. So let me just, I can kind of let you know what came in. So we've actually got a tie with join the band and are you currently happy with your current employer? Next is the front-end developer at company, then, the full-time working remotely in the location. And then we have a three tie here with the last three. So we're growing like crazy in the candidate name, quick question, and then the potential job opportunity. So it looks like the top two were join the band and are you currently happy with your employer?
Great. Thank you. Thank you everyone for taking that poll. Now I'm going to ask you, Miriam, if you can Oh, there, now I see it. Yay,
Oh,
technology. I see the numbers now. Oh, fabulous. I probably didn't press something that I should have, but
I
anyway.
think it was just delayed actually. So,
Okay,
but
fabulous.
I will just jump off.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. So, again, the tie was join the band and are you currently happy with your employer? I love the join the band because, and obviously we're reaching out to someone who maybe plays a musical instrument. That's something when I'm going to talk about in the next slides about personalization. When we reach out to candidates, when anybody reaches out to a candidate or just a message, there's 3 rules that I always have. The number 1 rule, let me make sure I'm sharing my screen, is that we keep everything unique and personalized. And while the messages are harder and it does take a little longer to put them together, the results are better. So in my book, it's better to spend more time putting together something that is targeted and personalized and unique that will stand out to a candidate as opposed to spamming 20 or 30 or 50 people. So they are harder, but if you make that a best practice, your results will increase drastically. The some of the subject lines that I shared with you, join the band. When you look at folks on, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, anywhere you find a profile, and that's really where I tie in why I shared something about my personal background, is candidates like the personalization. They're more open to they're more open to actually opening and reading an email if you personalize just the subject line. So I guess I could have included that, join the band, comma, Stephen, because if you actually do that, it creates a sense of urgency and personalization, and there's a higher percentage of a response rate from that person because they're not getting the same message that everybody is. Now, I know there's probably people out there thinking, well, how do we do that in mass? Sourcing with a purpose, where we work with so many different requisitions. There are tools and there is automation, but use the automation only when you need to. Use the automation in the right spot, and use the automation, but also pay attention to who your audience is and who you're messaging. And unique and personalized messages are harder. However, there's 3 rules that I have when sending messages, and they're very, very simple. And you probably experience these in your day-to-day life. And I'm looking at the chat too to make sure I'm not missing any other Ryan Gosling comments. You express empathy. You want the candidate to feel as if they matter. You want them to feel as if they matter because they do matter. You're presenting them an opportunity for them. So again, as recruiters, while we think I need to get a butt in a seat, and I think Johnny referenced that earlier, we want butts in seats. Yes, that's what we want. But that's not what the candidate wants. The candidate wants a true partnership with their recruiter, with the hiring manager, so that they can feel valued. So expressing empathy is extremely, extremely crucial. And the next point is be human. And of course, there's a picture of a robot. I mentioned earlier, there are automation tools, but when do you use the automation tools? You use the automation tools when you are doing something that can be automated by a robot. There was talks in the recruiting and the sourcing world a couple years ago, and as a matter of fact, I think there was a conference that I attended that talked about will the robots replace the humans? Absolutely not. From personal experience, I can say that the robot does not do it better. Robots do certain things better, but they can't source like humans do. You can use the technology to find the people, but you have to bring the human element to the table. Absolutely 100%. You won't know if a candidate has listed on their profile, recruiters do not contact me, if you are using an automation tool. That won't happen. So you have to be human. And the other way that I say this is, while we sit and we type messages to candidates on our computers and we reach out to them, sometimes we're just so, I don't know what the word is, so square. We just want to type a message. Take a moment back to understand what it feels like to be in their shoes, especially the high demanding candidates. Recruiters, for example, when I try to source people for my team, I am so targeted and personalized with my messages because everybody's looking for them. I want to stand out from the crowd. With engineers, directors of engineers, DevOps engineers, any kind of talent, that human element needs to come out so that they know that we're reaching out to them, not to fill a seat. Of course, that's our ultimate goal with the client, to fill a seat, but we also want to help the candidate. And then the final piece is, and this is always my favorite, keep it entertaining. Have fun with it. Imagine if you're sending an email to a candidate, take a step back and pretend that you're actually having a conversation with a candidate. Right now, I'm actually having a conversation with my video camera, and I can't see any of you and I can't see your reactions, but I'm speaking to you as if I am speaking to a live audience. Think of it the same way when you're messaging a candidate. Don't be afraid to add some humor. Don't be afraid to reference something that's unique on their profile. Don't be afraid to be yourself and keep it fun and keep it entertaining. Those are the most important things. So in summary, what I'd like to say is that sourcing with a purpose, it's not just about finding candidates, and it's not just about maybe posting a role and waiting for people to come in. There's a purpose behind sourcing, and the purpose is not only to find the right candidate, find the right match between the client, but also build that relationship. I have several samples of subject lines and emails that I have been using throughout my career, and my team has been using throughout the process. And I'd be happy to share those with anybody who's on this call, because they do work. People are afraid to step out of their comfort zones, unfortunately, and they don't like to think a little differently. But I will tell you, and I can assure you, thinking differently by being empathetic, being personalized, keeping it fun, keeping it entertaining will yield you results. So you can do it all. You can do the volume and the quality at the same time. It just takes a little patience to get started. And with that, I'd like to share my contact details. If anybody wants to reach out and connect, I'm open to networking on any social channel. I don't have Instagram. I think actually I do. I probably just don't know how to use it very well, so that's not on there. But you can find me on any of these other social channels. And with that, I don't know how much time we have, but I think we'd probably like to open it up to questions. And thank you for your time.
Second. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much, Angie. That was really, really great. So we opened it up for some Q&A right now. We actually have Carlo, who's actually has a question here regarding personalization and anti-spam bots. That's a good one. How to not get caught by it and be moved to the spam folder.
Yeah, that's a good question. And if it's okay, I'm going to turn off my, I just turned off my, so I could see you and we could talk. Okay, great. So it's hard. I think that, you have to stop using some of the spammy words. If you get flagged as spam, it's tough. It's tough to be removed from that, because it's just tough to be removed from that. So I think what you need to do is when you are messaging candidates, use the sincerity that I had mentioned. Be very intentional about what you're doing and reaching out to. There are bots, and sometimes the bots will grab some of that. So, for example, some things that I've encountered in my career, links. If you use too many links, sometimes they can get reported as spam. If you use too many emojis, sometimes it can get reported as spam. If you have too many people reporting spam, chances are then your domain is going to get reported as spam. The other thing that you can do is that when you are sending messages to people that you do know, ask them if they're receiving the messages. So if you're doing a follow-up with a candidate, or you're just sending over to an industry colleague or a peer or anybody, when they are receiving that message, if it accidentally gets into another, maybe not spam, but like a promotions box or another different area within your email, ask them to mark it as safe or mark it as not spam in order to increase your credibility. But unfortunately, there are bots that do grab that. And I think that some of the things that I've experienced personally is too many links, too many exclamation points, too many emojis, sometimes GIFs or GIFs, pictures. Think about when you're receiving a message from like a retailer, receiving a message from Amazon or from, someone who's advertising. A lot of times, a lot of links and photos do get recorded as spam. And I know I'm probably saying too much at this point. However, Carlo, I did do a case study on deliverability rates and what works better, plain text or HTML. So I can share that with you or the team here, the group here, on some of the results on that as well, and how to improve deliverability and open rates as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Carlo. And thank you, Angie, for answering that. I did actually have a comment on, I loved what you said about the personalization. I think it's so critical and so important, especially with how many messages we get. And we know we're spam sometime because, even in my experience, so I've been in HR for over 20 years, and I'm getting these, recruiters messaging me saying, hey, we have an accountant position for you. And I'm like, I am not an accountant. Like, where did you even find that? Right. So just these mass messages that we get. But keeping it personal. But I would further that. And just, again, in my experience, what I've noticed is, when you make it more about the candidate than the employer that's sourcing and looking, and you really focus on that, like, again, back to personalization, not putting pressure. So keeping it very, like, one of the terms I use is, are you interested in an exploratory conversation? And when it's exploratory, it's they're interviewing them, and the employers, so the employer is interviewing the candidate, and the candidate is also interviewing the employer. And so it's equally important. And I find sometimes when you're kind of taking that level of approach, it doesn't, you're getting more response rate because they're curious, right? They're like, you know what, there's no pressure. I'm curious to see if there's a fit here. And I think potential candidates will appreciate that in that response.
Absolutely. Miriam, I can't tell you how many times I get messages from even recruiters that come to me and say, would you be open to discussing an agile project management role? Because there's the word agile is on my profile. Right. I'm not a project manager, so why would you reach out to me? And there's one reference that I will use. So I'm sure there's some people here that know who Glenn Cathey is. I always give him a shout out whenever I talk on these talks. He was one of the first folks that I met in the business, and he's very well known in our space. So shameless plug, Glenn Cathey. If you get some connection requests, you'll know that for me. So just message me. But he is the author of Boolean Black Belt, and one of the reasons that I bring him up is to your point about how do you know what the candidate wants? When you reach out to them, so you see, John Smith is a Java developer, and you reach out to him and say, hey, I have a Java developer job. Would you be interested? How do you know if that's what he wants to do? Well, yes, it's on his profile, but we don't know if John wants to transition into being a project manager or something else. And what Glenn brings to the table, which I think is so fun, is that how many times do you go to a restaurant and sit down and have the server just bring you something without them knowing what you want? I go and I sit down at a restaurant, they bring me a margarita. Well, I didn't order one. They didn't take the chance to listen to me or come and ask me what I wanted. It's the same thing with candidates. Mm-hmm. You have to open yourself up. We're asking candidates, where we can, we're asking them salary, compensation information. We're asking them about, work authorizations and things like that. And they know nothing about us. And again, that's why I referenced the slides earlier about being personal. I'd like to talk about my family, and I like to talk about my personal likes and interests, because again, we're in the business of people. And if they're opening up and trusting us, we need to do the same with them. So I think it's really critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's equally important on the other side of that, with when you are working with that employer. And I had this kind of breakthrough moment with one of the employers or one of the clients I'm working with now, is I mentioned it's not one-sided. So they will be interviewing you as well. And they're like, oh, I never really thought about it that way. So you're almost coaching the employer on the employer side as well, that they need to be prepared and ready for those types of hard questions that are going to come their way as well. So definitely two-sided. Do we have any more questions? I don't see any in the Q&A tab. And I know we only have 5 minutes. I did want to talk a little bit about, or take a little bit of a deeper dive on the AI side, because what I'm finding is that there's so many of these HR tech tools that are coming in with that AI function. And it's like that shiny object. Everyone gets really excited about it, and they're like, they have the AI function, I must use it. In your experience, Angie, do you find, I know that because we want to keep that human connection because it's so critical, but what are the advantages of using a platform that has the AI component in it?
Yeah. So, this one's kind of tricky, Miriam. I have to say, I love technology and I test out a ton of products, but none of them work 100%. So AI is great, but the human is better. So I will tell you what I do like about AI is if we're using a sourcing tool, for example, and we want to find a lot of people at the same time, that's great. We can go in, put in our keywords, build a list of 100, 200, 300, 5,000, whatever people we want. However, is it always accurate? Are those names always accurate? Because every aggregating tool out there is never 100% current. And I will tell you that LinkedIn, as much as I love LinkedIn and it's the number one professional networking tool out there, they kind of hinder our ability to go outside the box, and use other AI technologies. So I say that from personal experience that sourcing, you can use the different aggregating tools and find the information and find the candidates, but they will not always be 100%. Even when you do a Boolean search and results come up, they'll never be the same. There always has to be a human person checking to make sure those profiles are relevant, because again, at the end of the day, it is a computer, and it doesn't work. I do like to call what I like to call AI is automated intelligence, just because if you use it in the way that it'll help you move forward, and then use the person, the actual person, for the area that requires that piece, then I think you can be successful. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more, Angie. I agree with that entirely. And then just one final note. I know we don't have any more questions coming through, but happy birthday. I should have said that right from the beginning, but it's your birthday today. So happy birthday, and a big shout out from a couple of us here. So thank you for spending the time with us today. It was very insightful, Angie. Thank you for